Talk and rock radio, where friends meet at the intersection of life, inspiration, and music. Here's your host, Rick Kern.
Welcome, everyone, to Talk and Rock Radio. I had the pleasure of meeting and interviewing my guest today several years ago at a private gathering here in El Paso. She's a multi-talented songwriter with a lot on her plate. She recently moved from Texas to Florida. Welcome, Cindy Jordan.
Hi there. How are you doing, Rick?
Oh, doing great, Cindy. It's so good to have you with us today.
Thank you. Thanks.
It's been a few years, you know. I think the last time I saw you, we were sitting on a couch at a private residence and listening to your talent in the party that we were with, which I don't really want to name right now because that wouldn't be right in this show. But anyway, it was a lot of fun, and I even had an opportunity to talk to you a little bit about your career. In fact, I named that show A Tale of Two Cindys.
And I love that. I love that. Actually, there's 5 Cindys, but I like that.
Yeah, 2 is a lot easier to remember. And in fact, I put that up on YouTube. So those of you out there that want to look at that one, just go to Cindy Jordan dash A Tale of Two Cindys. But anyway, let's kick this thing off with, let's talk about where it all began for you. You were a California surfer girl, and take it from there.
Well, I was a California surfer girl, and my grandmother played honky-tonk piano. So my very first memory of playing the piano was this. I always loved music, and I begged for piano lessons. So I ended up studying with a concert pianist and studied classical piano. And then one day I saw my guitar laying by the couch. I was a cocktail waitress, and I had learned how to play the guitar just because it was mobile, way more mobile than a piano. And I don't know a lot of chords. I just know enough to have fun. And I was listening to the song Sunday Morning Coming Down by Christopherson. And so I picked up the guitar and I just said, Sunday morning and the sun is shining in my eye that is open, because when you drink tequila, only one eye makes it. and I wrote this song in just a few minutes, and it was Jose Cuervo, You Are a Friend of Mine. And I started playing it at parties, and people really liked it. And then I had a friend who said, hey, let's go in and record your song. So he knew some people, and we ended up recording the song with, I didn't know who it was, but John Hobbs and some of the top musicians in Los Angeles at that time. Pretty heavy hitters, and it only took one take, just one. Wait, it took a lot more time setting up than it did to actually lay the track down. And so another friend, or the same friend, actually turned me on to Al Gallico, and Al Gallico was a big publisher, big time publisher. His catalog is just humongous. He used to bring acts from England over once a year. So he had the Animals, and he had the Pretenders, and he published George Jones and Tammy Wynette, and all kinds of songs. And he was partners with Billy Sherrill. So I brought my song in, and he recommended that I take my song to a contest that was going on in Los Angeles, just a music contest. Well, again, heavy hitters in Los Angeles were all there. They're all having fun, and I guess they were drinking. And when my song came on, they all, that's a hit, right? So he calls me the next day and says that he wants to publish it. And in the meantime, I take it to Larry Scott. Wait a second. I recorded it after that meeting. That's when I recorded it. And I'll tell you what happened. He took it to Nashville and everybody passed on it. And Brenda Lee said one of her biggest mistakes was passing on Jose Cuervo because it ended up being Song of the Year. And so after that, when everybody passed on it in Nashville, I said, well, I'll just record it. That's how that happened. And but I had brought him a little demo I had done with a friend. And so the song went #1 in Los Angeles with me singing it. But it never made the charts because Warner Brothers, there's a funny thing between Nashville and LA, you know, country music at that time, it had to come from Nashville. And so they didn't promote it. But about a year later, a year and a half later, Snuff Garrett, who had been at that meeting, he was pretty heavy hitter. He did all of the Clint Eastwood movies, and he was in the Wrecking Crew. I mean, he was just a big time guy. And he brought it into Shelley West's session because he knew it had gone #1. And Steve Dorff was the producer, and he really didn't want to do it. And I remember when my song was out and they weren't promoting it, and I was so frustrated, Rick. I was so frustrated. I went to every record store. I went everywhere trying to promote that thing. Called every radio station I could in the United States, and I was so frustrated. And I had this little talk with God and said, am I supposed to believe in you? You promise? I was so mad. I said, you can do hummingbirds and Grand Canyons and solar systems, and I'm supposed to be impressed. I mean, having this big meltdown. And I said, if you even exist, why don't you just do it? Why don't you just do it? Well, it turns out at the session where Steve Dorff was, John Hobbs was there. So there's my little miracle that happened. And he said, oh, I was on Cindy's record. He said, I can make a chart in 5 minutes. He said, you know, he says, it's a fun song. Let's just do it. Let's just have some fun and do it. And so they didn't even want to release it or put it in the album. But Al was persistent, and it got out on the charts. And what had happened, though, you know, there's something about hearing a song and then having somebody else do the song later as a cover, right, or whatever. And it's like, remember True Grit? I mean, who else can be True Grit or Rooster except John Wayne? And they redid that movie, and people always say, no, it wasn't John Wayne. So that happened in Los Angeles with my record, because when it was ready to be released, I went up to Al's office and they played it, and I went, wow, that sounds so different than my record. And I said, well, okay. So that night I had a gig down at Pacific Palisades. It was a hotel down in Marina Del Rey, and there was about 400 people there. And I was playing DJ for them. And so I put on Shelley's record, and the whole place booed. They all booed. It is on, and I'm going, oh. So they released the record. It comes in at 73. 73. That means that might get in the 60, might last a week, but and I'm so frustrated. And I'm crying and I'm blubbering and it's not fair. It's not fair. In the first week, Rick, it went to 53. It jumped 20 spaces in 1 week. And I stopped crying. And the next week, it jumped 10 more spaces to 43. So in 2 weeks, it jumped 30 spaces. And then they had to slow it down because it wasn't a bullet. It was a rock. I mean, it was like, it was just going crazy. And it ended up being Billboard Song of the Year.
Fantastic.
That's the story of Jose Cuervo. But, you know, Shelley, that I always felt bad about that because people were, you know, in Los Angeles, they'd all fallen in love with the original Jose Cuervo. It was so grassroots. It was so organic. It was so not Nashville. It was just what it was. And so LA embraced it, and Nashville didn't embrace mine, but they embraced Shelley. So.
And I've got to add that was your very first song that you've written, right?
That was the first song I ever wrote. But it put me on track as a songwriter and composer, because I'd never thought of myself as that. And then I went, well, I guess that's what I do for a living. So after that, I met my husband at the Palomino Club in North Hollywood. I'm sure you're familiar with that place. And that's where they broke in a lot of artists. And Tommy Thomas was the owner at that time. And I had a pretty good following in Los Angeles, and they used to have me open for the new Nashville acts because I had a following. So I was an opening act a lot in Los Angeles. And then I met my husband there. He was backing a man named Craig Dillingham, who was a wonderful singer, who is now dating, or actually they're together, Tanya Tucker. So that's Craig, and he's a good friend of ours. And so he moved me to East Texas, and we started having babies, and the tequila thing wasn't working for me anymore as far as songwriting and performing, because I was pregnant and
you had to switch from tequila to pablum, right?
I told people, well, what happened was the local fire department asked me to put on a concert for a fundraiser. And so I went to the local radio station and got a bunch of local singers. But at the time, my daughter, she was like 2 or 3 years old, and I had her in dance. And so she was up on stage and she was tapping her little foot, you know, to this, and she had a tutu, and everybody just thought it was amazing. But the place was packed. This auditorium was packed. And I asked this row of people, I said, so do you have somebody dancing? And they were all there for a 3-year-old, and there were 12 people there for this one 3-year-old. And I said, I know what I'm going to do. I know how I'm going to get butts in a seat. So I got a bunch of kids to learn these little Christian songs I started writing. And they all got up there, and they were wearing little blue jeans and like polo shirts, you know, of all different colors. That was our uniform. And we had 35 kids, and they all sang these little songs that I had written. And then one of the little girls came up and said, where are we going to sing next, Miss Cindy? And I'm, okay, got this little bing. Okay, so I went with these kids, and we recorded the songs that I had written, and we started singing at like the Shriners Hospital and pediatric wards and the Blueberry Festival and the Holiday in Dixie. I would bring these kids with me, so they got to sing usually once or twice a month, and started a little ministry and called it Kids for Kids. And did that for 12 years. And still would do I was still writing country, and I would still do shows, but mainly my focus was on these kids because I had kids. So I wanted to not be away from them. I wanted to be with them. So, but then all the kids grew up, and then we ended up having to leave Texas under some horrible circumstances. Our horses all died, and it was horrible. And with Dallas grass seed poisoning. And so we were so depressed. And so Dennis and I decided just to move on to Nashville, which was close to his family. So we went to Nashville and we lived there for 8 years. And there I landed a record deal doing ambient piano, going back to my classical roots. And so I did a little album, and it ended up on a friend's desk. And the record company guy was walking by and said, "What's that?" And he heard it, and they gave me an 11 CD record deal.
Nice.
So I did 11 CDs for them, a few covers. The Christmas, they wanted 4 Christmas albums, so I had to put my own brand on and make Joy to the World and Silent Night sound like they've never sounded before, you know.
In 6/8, right?
Yeah, I did my Joy to the World in 6/8, and then I did 3 albums they called New Beginnings for pregnant women, and then I did 4 albums called The Peaceful Journey. And so I did that, and then we moved to San Angelo, Texas. And it seems like every time I move, I do a different genre. So, well, wait, before we left Nashville, I started writing Celtic music. And the reason I wrote Celtic music was because I would go to the Songwriter things, and I wanted to be different. Plus, I just loved Celtic music. Instrumental Celtic music. So in fact, one of my albums is called Celtic Garden, and the other one's called The Celtic Journey. So I wrote some, and in the Celtic Garden, I did some covers of that with cello and flute and piano, woodwinds, that type of thing. And so I did Celtic. So now I've got country music, children's music, Celtic music, ambient piano. And then I moved to San Angelo, where I hear two amazing stories. So the first story that I heard, I went out to Paint Rock and I heard the story of the Lady in Blue. And that's where you come in. That's when I came to El Paso and did a house concert there. And I had to tell the story of the Lady in Blue. And if you want to know the story of the Lady in Blue, whoever's listening, just go to theladyinblue.com. It's an amazing story about this nun in the 1600s who bilocated to the New World without ever leaving Spain. It is an amazing story. The thing that's amazing about that story is that there's so much documentation that it really happened. They wrote everything down, those missionaries did. So
what's amazing about this story is that you and your partner went to Spain and performed this. It was incredible.
Yes, we did. My partner, she translated all the music and into Spanish. And so we were able to do that in Agreda, where Maria was from, in her convent. And she was laying in a coffin under glass, uncorrupted. That's the other thing about this woman. She's incorrupted. She's still together. and then I heard it. And then also on a whole another spectrum, San Angelo is known for it was founded on brothels, saloons, and gambling. Okay. It was part of the Wild West. And there's a fort there called Fort Concho. And so the brothels did business with this fort. And I started thinking about how it was back then with those women. And I was thinking, why would women do that? But at the same time, there's a place there called Miss Hattie's. It's kind of a fun little place that you can go, and it was a bordello, and they take you on a tour of this thing in Miss Hattie's. So I had bought a saloon outfit and started playing piano because going back to my grandmother, those were the honky-tonk songs that she used to play. I used to play. So I played those. I was dressed up in a saloon outfit and started writing kind of fun songs, which turned into a musical, which is being performed in 2023. And so the musical, it evolved from these songs to a musical to actually a novel. So I wrote a novel called Pearl, which is the history of San Angelo and the Wild West, but also it's a human interest story about why women would get involved. It's all full of research, and it all takes place in the 1920s. So it's really, really fun. It's a fun musical, but there's also some very tender, and there's a scary part in it, and that goes with the novel. And so I had some interest with a mini series with my novel. And when they were looking at the mini series, they said, do you have any more material in case we do this? I said, give me a few months. So I wrote a sequel and called it Diamond. And then I thought, I have to have a trilogy. You can't just write 2 books. You have to have a trilogy, right? So I wrote Ruby. And Emerald is up here. I haven't started on that. But so I have Pearl, Diamond, and Ruby. Ruby has Wyatt Earp in it. So what happens is Pearl is this upper class brothel, and it talks about, I discovered these 2 women called the Everlay Sisters in Chicago. And what was interesting about them was they encouraged the girls not to be intimate with the customers, but they were paid millions of dollars. So it was kind of like a very fancy massage parlor, I guess you would say, but it in the old terms. And the women were dressed in beautiful gowns. They were beautiful women. They were educated. They were clean. They were checked every week. they had they were caught up on current events, so they'd be interesting to talk to. And then in today's money, a client would drop about $5,000 a night.
Wow.
5 to 6 grand at least. So they had the high rollers, and you had to be somebody to come into the Everlay house, which is what the Everlay sisters capitalized on, was those people that have all kinds of money that have to drive the Lamborghini or have the mansion or the yacht in the Everlay house, right? So they capitalized on that. And so I thought that was a very good message for women, to not be intimate unless, be very selective with your intimacy, because as we know, our culture today is kind of out of control in that respect. And so I really thought, well, this can open up the dialogue with young girls and women, because it really does affect a woman's self-esteem when she feels like she's been used. At least these women got paid. They knew what they were getting into. They weren't looking for husbands, and those guys weren't looking for wives. But it's, as my girlfriend would say, it's all about biology. It's the way, it's funny. Our family meets in Pahrump for family reunions, and Heidi Fleist, I don't know if you remember her, the madam from Hollywood, she was arrested, which is kind of a crazy thing. But she started, so when she was in Nevada, she tried to start an escort service for men, for women to pay for the men. No, we're not wired that way. They're not wired that way. It didn't make it. It's all about the men paying for the women. So those businesses do well. So human nature again, but it's going to be funny. It's about cowboys and these beautiful girls, and it's called Pearl.
It's Friday night. We're all getting ready. The cowboys are coming to town. I've taken a bath. I fixed up my hair, and I put on my very best gown. They've been working all week in the Texas sun. They just got paid, and they're looking for fun. We always show the boys a good time. The cowboys are coming to town. Let's step outside. We'll look to the west. The cowboys are coming to town. Look at the dust cloud getting bigger and bigger while the sun is going down. They're riding their horses in hard and fast. They'll be rootin' and tootin' when they're here at last. We always show the boys a good time. The cowboys are coming to town. Yippee-yi-yay, get along, little doggy. Yippee-yi-yay, get along, little doggy. Yippee-yi-yay, get along, little doggy. The cowboys are coming to town. Look at their girls, I can see them riding. The cowboys are coming to town. Look at the dust cloud getting bigger and bigger while the sun is going down. Here they come riding in hard and fast. Their horses are lathered and they're here at last. We always show the boys a good time. The cowboys are coming to town. Yeah, we always show the boys a good time when the cowboys come into town.
Fantastic. I got to ask you a question about a song of yours that you sent me called Santa Fe. Now, when I listened to that, I could have sworn that it was Randy Travis singing it. Who was singing that song?
It's a man named Lance. I can't exactly remember what his last name was, but he was a demo singer in Nashville. But
very good. I mean, he sounded like one of the White Hats. He was really quite talented. I really enjoyed his voice. And tell me about Santa Fe. When did you record that, and what was the inspiration of that song?
Well, it's funny. I was living in Nashville. It's quite a while ago that I wrote that song. And Princess Diana had just had that accident. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking about the whole thing with what if, like what if by just a minute later, you know, and we think of that all the time when something happens. Boy, if I hadn't been here, then that wouldn't have happened, or if this, I almost didn't do this, or that wouldn't have happened, you know. So we have that whole what if deal. And it got me to thinking, and then I thought, well, let's turn this into something kind of fun and a country song. And so it was, what if, so it's about this man who falls in love with this woman in Santa Fe, New Mexico, where my best girlfriend is from, that area. And I just love Santa Fe. I mean, anybody who's been to Santa Fe, it's just something magical about Santa Fe. And so I kind of made up this story of this cowboy falling in love with this Native American girl who was selling jewelry, and thinking, you know, what if he had gone a different route on his rodeo route? He would never have met her.
I was headed back to Texas, and I went through Santa Fe. There I met a woman who took my breath away. She was selling jewelry at the downtown market square. It's amazing how close I came to not being there. What if I had gone to Dallas by way of San Antonio? What if I had never met her and spent the night alone? What if it was raining and the stars weren't shining bright? What if I had never been in Santa Fe that night? Moonlight on her long dark hair was shining midnight blue. She took me by the heart, and then she took me to her room. In a night of enchantment, she led the lovers' dance. To think that I was only in Santa Fe by chance. What if I had gone to Dallas by way of San Antonio? What if I had never met her and spent the night alone? What if it was raining and the stars weren't shining bright? What if I had never been in Santa Fe that night?
It's a great song. Also, I was gonna, well, all of these stories that you're sharing, Cindy, they're all about God wink moments. You know, you've had all these opportunities and you've acted on them, which is really so cool. You know, I mean, it's like God is guiding you in your musical journey, you know, every step of the way, every genre, every locale. I mean, all the different things that are going on. I got to ask you a question, and I didn't catch it earlier when you were talking about Dennis. Was he a session player, or what does he play, and how was his?
No, he was an oil man with a lot of money backing Craig Dillingham.
I see. Okay.
Remember those days? And then it all went away. We moved to the ranch, and the money all went away. It was that big oil bust in the 80s, right? But so that, and Dennis writes very good songs himself. Very good songs. He doesn't write a lot, but he writes. So he plays a little guitar, and he was a cowboy.
I was just curious because there's a lot of similarities in parallels in your stories. I've got I don't know if you know her, but a real good friend in a gal named Karen Taylor Good. Karen is a Nashville artist, and she's written hit songs for Patti Loveless and many others. And she's married to a Dennis also.
Oh, no.
And Dennis was a trombone player for Elvis Presley. So I had to ask that question about your Dennis to see if there was a connection there to the music side of all of this as well. But any of your other stories you want to share about your time in this industry, or?
Oh my gosh, some I can, some I can't.
Well, go for the ones you can, and maybe in between.
Industry. Well, let's see. I would say music is such a great, it's my whole world, but it's so powerful. And I will tell you my favorite thing about writing Jose Cuervo, and it happens even today. It happened a couple days ago. When I say I wrote Jose Cuervo, or I'm with somebody who says she wrote Jose Cuervo, someone will start singing it. Someone I've never met before will start singing a song I wrote. Now that's amazing to me. And then a lot of times there's a story attached to it. And there's one particular story that really stands out. I was in Nashville with a DJ from Michigan, and she says, I've got the greatest story about your song, Jose Cuervo. And she said, on Saturdays, there was this guy who started calling every Saturday morning, and he would say, hi, this is Joe. Can you play Jose Cuervo for little Joe so he can sing and dance? And she said, well, how old is little Joe? He's 7. which is interesting. That's interesting. That's interesting because people have never had a drink, and children love Jose Cuervo. And so anyway, she would play it, and the next Saturday he would call and say, hey, can you play Jose Cuervo for little Joe so he can sing and dance? Well, those were the good old days when there were DJs that you could call up and talk to. Remember those days before it all got canned and put in reel to reel and no personalities? I mean, you could actually talk. And so in the conversation, she had learned that little Joe's mother had passed away.
Oh.
She had died. And so the dad was, but this song makes him so happy. He says, it's been really rough since his mom died, that kind of thing. So she said, then several weeks went by and I didn't hear from Joe. He didn't call. And so she said, then finally one Saturday morning, the phone rang and it was Joe. And she said, hey, Joe, where have you been? We've been missing you. How's little Joe? And he said, well, things haven't been too good lately. Our house burned down.
Oh, no.
Well, but if you can play Jose Cuervo, that'll make him happy. And he can sing and dance. Well, all these people, this is what I call the silent majority. And this is what you were talking about before. You never know how you're going to touch somebody's life. And we all do at some degree. Furniture, money, food, toys, clothes all got donated to Little Joe and his dad and sent to the radio station from all those people who would listen and hear Little Joe. I always get really emotional when I tell this story. So you just don't know how you affect people's lives. So, I was thinking one day, why do not people who've never drunk and little kids love the song Jose Cuervo and they like to sing it? They don't know what it means, but they like to sing it. And I figured it's the spirit of the song, Rick. The song is all about freedom. What would you do with right now if you knew you'd have no judgment? Nobody would call you down for something. That's what she says. She goes, I don't care what the consequences are. I want to do this now, and I want to be happy, and I want to have fun. It reminds me of a toddler whipping off their diaper and running through the sprinkler, and we all go, I wish I could do that. Just this spirit of freedom of not feeling judged. And that is the biggest thing that happens in our lives and holds us back. That fear of judgment thing. People don't do things because they're afraid it's not going to work out. They're afraid they're going to get judged. They're afraid someone's going to get mad at them. They're afraid. And they hold back because they're worried about another person's opinion or other people's opinion.
And don't you think that because of our music today, it is one of the few things that we still have that enables us to do what we want to do and have the say-so we want to have, because nobody's going to change it. We can do what we want. And it's an international language. It's something that people can relate to and enjoy and bring happiness, in so many ways. I mean, even some of what you do in working with people that have medical issues, and I know music therapists that personally do this and work with people that have Alzheimer's and issues like that. And I think this is such an incredible type of method and way to get to people's minds. They don't totally understand it, but when you see the reaction that happens with people that have mental issues, Alzheimer's or those kind of related areas, it opens up a pathway that's been closed for a while. It's really exciting to watch and see.
It really is, Rick. When I was living in Nashville, I actually worked for a rehab ranch out there, and I would go out and do music programs because music is so powerful. And what had happened was, after I had done all of that piano music, MP3 had come out, and that's when music became free. Napster and all of that happened, and music became free. And so I put my music up on mp3.com, and they were supposed to pay a nickel a play, which it didn't happen. But in the meantime, I had almost 5 million downloads of my music because my Ave Maria was #1 for like months. And they finally had to take it down because you go to mp3.com, you'd see Ave Maria, and then you'd see all my music there. And they finally had to not make it #1 anymore because it kept getting downloaded and downloaded and downloaded. But you're right. And so I actually was at a bookstore and I picked up the book, The Mozart Effect. Actually, it almost fell out. It was like, have you ever had that happen where it just about fell out of the shelf?
Mm-hmm.
And it might as well have. And I learned about all the research that they've done on the power of music since the 40s, since after World War II. And I started studying that, and I said, I got to go out and tell the whole world about all of the benefits of music. But you can instantly change the atmosphere or the mood of a room, the energy in a room. I was doing a retreat for a bunch of women, and everybody was telling their stories, and people were crying, and it had taken the energy was going and my girlfriend looked at me, she says, quick, sing Jose Cuervo. So I picked up my guitar and I started singing it, and the whole place changed and people got up and started dancing instantly. That's how powerful music is. Or it can put you back. I mean, they have done so much study on the power of music. Some of it's not used in a good way. And
right.
That's something that people need to be aware of. When you are listening to music that's negative and this filthy lyric stuff that's out there, that is energy.
Yeah, it's a negative subliminal type of thing that happens, and I agree with you. That's not what it should be used for. Yeah.
No. But it is, but you can counteract it by changing the channel. Just changing the channel.
Okay, CJ, you are a friend of mine. Are you gonna play? Are you gonna play something on your guitar? There, it just happened to be right there.
You told me to have it ready. Okay, so I'm gonna do Jose Cuervo for you. Okay. I like to start off. My grandmother was from El Paso, and I'll tell you real quick. Her dad and her father and her oldest brother were captured by Pancho Villa, and in Chihuahua, they were in Parral, Chihuahua, and so they had to come up with a ransom. And after the ransom was paid, and Tita remembered Pancho Villa. She remembered that her mother, he put her on her lap, and she remembered him. She was 3 years old. She said he was the meanest man she's ever met. That's what she said. But she said that he had the most beautiful eyes I've ever seen. Isn't that something?
Let me tell you something real quick, and you may not know this. I know you like to play some Linda Ronstadt, right. And Linda's grandfather lived at one time in El Paso, and we're talking about, I think it was 1917, as I recall. Right. He had a store in downtown El Paso called Ronstadt's, and I think I even heard stories that Pancho Villa would go in there and buy certain things at that time. But yeah, so we have similar connections here in that two different grandparents that were from El Paso and how they connected to Pancho Villa,
Right. Well, yeah, my mother was born in El Paso, and Tita lived on Mesa across from the big cathedral, St. Peter's.
Yeah. Yeah. St. Patrick's.
St. Patrick's, yeah.
Yeah.
And Mom grew up there, and then they moved to California. But yeah, El Paso is our family history. It was all about El Paso. So yeah. So I'll do a little. I like to kind of get in the mood. Tita, every day at 4:00, she still had that European thing that she did, and she would have her copita, and it was always a little thing of Jose Cuervo with salt and lime. So she called it her copita. So we'll get in the mood a little bit. Allá rancho grande y allá donde vivía, allá rancherita que alegre me decía, te voy a hacer tus calzones como los usan rancheros, de los comienzos de lana, de los cabos de cuero. So I like to do that because I think that was the first Spanish song that I learned. Well, it's Sunday morning and the sun is shining in my eye that is open and my head is spinning. Was the life of the party. Can't stop grinning. I had too much tequila last night. Jose Cuervo, you are a friend of mine. I like to drink you with a little salt and lime. Did I kiss all the cowboys? Did I shoot out the lights? Did I dance on the bar? Did I start any fights?
Now wait a minute, things don't look too familiar. And who is this cowboy who's sleeping beside me? He's awful cute, but how'd I get his shirt on? I had too much tequila last night. Jose Cuervo, you are a friend of mine. I like to drink you with a little salt and lime. Did I kiss all the cowboys? Did I shoot out the lights? Did I dance on the bar? Did I start any fights? All those little shooters, how I love to drink them down. Come on, bartender, let's have another round. Well, the music is playing and my spirits are high. Tomorrow might be painful, but tonight I'm gonna fly. Jose Cuervo, you are a friend of mine. I like to drink you with a little salt and lime. Every time we get together, I sure have a good time. You're my friend, you're the best, mi amigo Cuervo. Jose Cuervo, you are a friend of mine. I like to drink you with a little salt and lime. Did I kiss all the cowboys? Did I shoot out the lights? Did I dance on the bar? Did I start any fights? Jose Cuervo, you are a friend of mine. I like to drink you with a little salt and lime. Did I kiss all the cowboys? Did I shoot out the lights? Did I dance on the bar? Did I start any fights? Jose Cuervo, you are a friend of mine. I like to drink you with a little salt and lime. Did I kiss all the cowboys? Did I shoot out the lights? Did I dance on the bar? Did I start any fights? Jose Cuervo, you are a friend of mine. I like to drink you with a little salt.
Fantastic.
There it is.
Thank you, Cindy. This was fun. I really appreciate you coming on board with me today and sharing some of your inspiring stories and what you've been doing all these years. It's pretty cool. Going from the left coast to the right coast now. How you liking Florida?
Yeah, I've gone from deep blue water to turquoise water.
There you go. And a few hurricanes in between, right?
I haven't experienced that yet, but we'll see. You know, everything's a new adventure. I know that God has a new assignment here. I've already started writing songs for my new musical. It's called Groovy.
Yep.
Healing Groovy. So it's about peace and love. So, and I've got bell bottoms. And
Back to your roots. That's cool.
back to my roots, back to the beach, back to my roots. Yeah. So.
Well, thank you for sharing your story with us today, and say hi to Dennis. Thank you for taking a little bit of your time with me, and let's stay in touch.
Oh, absolutely. I loved it. Thank you, Rick.
Thank you, Cindy. I really appreciate it. Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.